What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of What is Health? And today, how carbs put me back in ketosis. Alright guys, so as you saw in the thumbnail, this video is all about how carbs help me get back in ketosis. Fortunately for you curious people, this video is not clickbait. This actually happened. This is a true story. This is my experience with introducing carbohydrates back into my diet over the past 2 weeks. And before I go forward, I want to preference a couple things. One, this was not sick legit keto. I was not eating 200 grams of carbs every other day. My carbs never got over 55 grams a day. None of that happened. I didn't eat rice. I didn't eat Twinkies. I didn't eat cake. So before you think that this is a check mark to, hey, listen, if you are losing weight and you don't feel like keto's working, you can go eat cake and you can still lose weight. That's not what this video is about. But this video is fascinating, and I really do want to share this information with you. So let's get started. So give you some background context. So for those of you that don't know, I was posting it on social media. I was having a lot of issues with my running. My heart rate would skyrocket. There were days that I would go for one of my tempo runs and my heart rate would shoot from 150 to 200 in less than 5 minutes. My heart just was not handling the runs well. My pace with my 150 beats per minute heart rate, which is my mafetone heart rate, kept going up. I got it down to like 930 while I was still progressing. And then over time I started to digress, and I got to a point where it was like 11 minute per mile pace, which is extremely slow by my standards and training for a marathon, obviously. So that was going on. I started experiencing horrible aches and pains in my joints chronically. Like, I wasn't sleeping. I was waking up every hour, tossing and turning. Like, it was really miserable. I started developing really bad bags under my eyes, and I started having depressive mood swings. And all this stuff was going on, and I was like, what is going on? And so I started trying, we tried all kinds of things. We took 3-4 days off from running. I did 80% fat keto. I did, high protein. I did high fat. I did extended fasting. I did different kinds of intermittent fasting windows. I did all this kind of stuff. And this is the blood sugar numbers I got. You're gonna see them pop up all over the screen. Crazy, right? You're talking, there was a day I fasted all day, and the only meal I had was 2 keto bricks. And my blood sugar the next morning was 111. 111. That's insane. And that's not a knock at keto break. That's not a knock at high fat keto. I've used it before. It works great. This is showing you how bad my body, position my body was in. My body was craving something that I wasn't giving it, and I didn't know what that was. And so I just kept getting chronically elevated insulin. My blood sugar usually sits around 0.2 all the time anyways, but now I was seeing 0.1 in lows chronically, even at 76% fat, 78% fat, and and running and oxidizing a bunch of fat, but just nothing was happening. I was watching my blood sugar tank. I had a CGM on, and you can see it here. It would tank while I ran. It would go from like 80 down to 40. Like, it would just drain my blood sugar. And then the rest of the day, 95, 100 all day. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. And so I started doing research, and I found this thing called UPS, which is called Unexplained Underperformance Syndrome. And basically it's categorized, it's a broad term to categorize unexplained downgrades in performance in mostly endurance athletes. It's generally caused by a huge amount of stress, because the running and endurance training itself is going to cause a lot of stress on your body. That, coupled with the rest of your life, can really put yourself in a bad position. And so I was seeing a lot of the symptoms that UPS shows, depression, fatigue, aches and pains in joints, all kinds of things from the chronic cortisol. So fun quick tip, cortisol, if it's chronic, will strip minerals and nutrients from your joints, which can leave you achy. That's why chronic stressful lives can lead to arthritis. True story. All right, moving on. So this is all going on, and I'm like, okay, what do I do? I took a whole week off of running too. I took a whole week off to see if that would help. It didn't help at all. I came back, and it was just as bad as it was. I couldn't control my heart rate while I ran. It just, nothing was working. And someone told me, hey, why don't you, and this someone happens to be my running coach. I almost didn't say it because I'm going to hear about it later. But they were hey, you should try to introduce some carbs. Your body obviously wants something. You tried everything else, try this. And to be honest, I didn't like it. I was scared. And I was scared because, obviously with my bulimia, my eating disorders, I was like, okay, what's gonna happen? Am I gonna, is this gonna make me crave more? Like, everybody I've watched that's been eating carbs lately, like, once they start, they just, fall victim to, the 300, eat whatever you want, go back to cheesecake and white bread kind of thought process. And, I didn't want that for myself. But I wasn't willing to give up running. I wasn't willing to give up running at all. And so what we did was we found something called a targeted ketogenic diet, is basically the term. And it's really very similar to a strict keto diet. The basic difference is not in the macros. The macros stay the same. I still eat around 5% carbs every day, 70 to 72% fat, and the rest is protein. And the only difference is, instead of having those carbohydrates, those 30 to 50 grams, depending on my day, over the course of the whole day in the form of dark leafy greens, I have 20 to 30 of those in the morning or pre-run in the form of sweet potato. I've been playing with maple syrup, things like that. I have a carb meal to start my day, and then the rest of my day is ketogenic. And by the end of the day, I'm back at a 75% macro ratio. And to be honest, I was super scared. Like, the first day, I remember the first day I was trying to eat some sweet potato, and it was really dogmatic how hard it was for me to take a bite of this root vegetable that grows in the ground, right? But what I want you to see is this. This was crazy. So here is a graph, and if you notice, you got those high 100s, the 90s, right? And you see this one go from 90 down to below 80. What is that? So that 90 day was blood sugar right before I had my first carb meal, okay? My 20 grams of complex carbs. And then I went for a run, actually. And then the next day was my fasted glucose. It dropped 10 points. I haven't seen an 80 fasted glucose in months, okay? And look, it doesn't change. It doesn't change at all. And so I kept doing this. I played with acorn squash. I was looking up all kinds of nutrient-dense carb sources that I could do. And I fell on acorn squash and sweet potato because they're the lowest in lectins, they're the lowest in phytonutrients, they're the lowest in anti-nutrients, and they're the best for gut health. And so if I was gonna eat them, I wanted them to be really, really clean sources. And so those are the ones that I tend to lean on. I still don't eat white rice, I still don't eat white potatoes. I don't want to eat those things. I have no craving for them. I have no craving for sugar. In fact, I don't even have craving for keto treats right now. It's really an odd phenomenon in my brain. I don't crave any of that crap. I don't crave anything, nothing. It's super, super weird. And when I say crave, I don't mean I don't think about certain foods I want to eat. When I say crave, I mean there's not a compulsive thought process towards a food anymore at all. So I kept doing this. This 20 grams, 30 grams of carbs, and then I would just have the other 10, maybe 0. I might do a carnivore day throughout the rest of my day. And then this magical thing happened. I was in nutritional ketosis. For those of you that don't know me, I tend to process ketones pretty well. And so even when I do really high fat, unless I'm in a deep deficit, I tend not to go into nutritional ketosis easy. So the fact that I saw that number and I had been eating 130 grams of sweet potato every day blew my mind. I almost couldn't wrap my head around it. But here's what I realized. What was happening was when you run, when you're an endurance athlete, your body taps into glycogen stores, bottom line. And when you're marathon training, there are training days that you tap into way more than what you have in glycogen reserves. And once that happens, your body freaks out and you start having these central nervous system shutdowns. And that's what causes really bad form, and that's what causes injury, most commonly in the knees and hips, which, if y'all know, I really messed up my hip and lower back. I've messed up my outer knee while I ran. Both of those were on super long runs. My first 10 mile I ever experienced, and then my second 15 mile I ever experienced. And so I kind of treat those as, those were examples of a central nervous system shutdown. And that was happening because my body didn't have any glycogen or sugar left. And that, you can probably get away with that one race. You know, if you ran a marathon, that's fine. But when you're training every single week, it's extremely taxing on your body. And so your body's sugar has to be chronically elevated to keep replenishing glycogen because you depleted all of it. So it's chronically elevated all day. And then when you're running, it dumps. And the only reason you don't go in a coma is because you have high ketones. And so it's just like this really, really weird environment in your body. It stresses it out. So cortisol is constantly raised to get your body to release sugar in the form of either muscle or glycerol from fat. It will do both. There was a period of running where I got extremely weak. And I don't know if my body was eating muscle as well, but that's what was happening. And so what this diet that I'm doing now is doing is it's giving my body those carbohydrates to equalize my cortisol levels, to calm it down and go, hey, you don't have to freak out. You don't have to eat muscle. We have what you want right here in this small amount that will get you through this run. You're gonna be fine. And my body calms down. My body has calmed down. Within 3 days, my joint and ache pain went completely away. So within 1 day, blood sugar dropped 10 points. Within 3 days, I had no joint pain. And then that following Friday, or that Friday, the first week I started doing this diet, it's been 3 weeks now, I went for a run, my last run, and then I took these past 2 weeks off. But that last run was my best run in weeks. I was actually able to control my heart rate and keep it under 160. And so it obviously is working. And so my point to this video is not to encourage carb eating. It's not to tell you that, if you should totally start eating sweet potato. My point though is that if you're an endurance athlete, this might be something you want to look into, like a targeted approach. Again, you're still going to be in nutritional ketosis. You're still going to be oxidizing fat primarily as a fuel source. This is more balancing an equation. It's not even using the carbs as a fuel source in my perspective. In my opinion, this is me balancing the equation by choosing certain foods. It's just like if spinach makes you gassy, you stick to cauliflower, right? Well, this is, instead of eating cauliflower because it doesn't help my runs and help my cortisol, I'm eating sweet potato. But I'm still eating 20 to 30 grams of carbs a day. Like I said, the highest I'll go is like 50, 55. So that's really my truth right now. And it was really hard for me to get on here and talk about it because, I've been strict keto for 3 years and all of that. But I want to start to stand up for my opinion. I'm no longer, and don't get me wrong, like I definitely have my own opinion on certain subjects, but I've always some of my opinions have been built around other people's opinions. I don't want to do that. I have begun to pull myself out of my personal dogmatic mindset. If you listen to the Road podcast, Dogma Dilemma was my last podcast. I was talking towards myself in some of those instances, link below. I'm done with that. This is my truth, and this really helps me. And so what does a day of eating look like for me? So I'll wake up in the morning, and right now I'm doing this every day, but next week I'm gonna start only doing it on the days I run, and then my other days will be strict keto. So right now though, I'll wake up and I'll either have sweet potato, I have a green banana flour bread that I made that's homemade, and then I have acorn squash. And so what I'll do is I'll have one of those three. Generally my favorite right now is sweet potato with a little bit of maple syrup, like 7 milliliters. It's only like 5 grams of carbs. The reason for that is we don't do honey because honey is mostly fructose, and that goes to the liver glycogen, which isn't gonna help me with my runs. If you notice, all of this is catered around my run performance. But if I do maple syrup, it's gonna go to my muscle glycogen, and it'll be that quick, that quick source that my body wants. So I'll play with that. I'm not using that a lot right now, obviously, because I'm not running. But so I'll have that 130 to 200 grams of carb source with like 2 or 3 eggs, okay? Then I'll fast for about 4 hours. And then my next meal generally will be half a keto brick. Half a keto brick, I might have some more eggs or whatever. And then my next meal is going to be, fatty meat, maybe some low carb veggies, sometimes not. And then some butter, fat source. I might have a fatty coffee, something like that. So that's what a day of eating looks like for me. So like I said, it's really not that much different. It's just that instead of having 2 or 3 salads over the course of the day or a bunch of veggies, I concentrate those carbs to a targeted focus around the mornings or my workouts. And as I said, starting next week, since my body has really created a new baseline, I'm only going to start introducing that in the mornings of my runs. So that is that, guys. I hope this makes sense. If you have questions, put it in the comment section below. This is a fascinating topic for me as well. And like I said, you know, it's one of those things, like, this was my last resort, and I'm so glad I did it because I've been able to help me. And I have a client that runs, and I've been able to help her through, you know, not necessarily doing what I'm doing, but even a small increase in balancing her equation. And so it's been mind-opening for me to understand that this is a perspective you can have, and you can still be in nutritional ketosis. And it's not just about that. Agreed. It's not just about having ketones in the blood, but low blood sugar, high ketones. What is your body running off of? It's not running off of glucose, obviously. It's running off of fat. So that's my perspective on it. I hope that makes sense. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it fascinated you as much as it fascinated me. And yeah, so I hope you have a great day. See you next time. All right, guys, so I really wanted to make this point, like, you know, all right, guys, so as you saw in the thumbnail, you know, all right, guys, so as you saw in the thumbnail, this joke